Hey friends, it's Lara here. Today is January 26th, 2022. Thanks for being here. In today's video, which is going to be pretty off the cuff, I don't really have many notes here. We are going to talk about the new moon in Aquarius that's coming out on February 1st. And we're going to take it through all 12 signs like we always do. And before I do that, I just want to say thanks to those of you who have joined me on Facebook and Instagram recently. And here, if you're new here too, thanks so much. I so appreciate it. So a couple days ago, I decided that I needed to sort of formally introduce myself on those platforms because I don't think I had really ever done that. And I don't have a website up right now, right? That's coming. So there's not really any place where you can find out about me, you know. I mean, I do these videos here, and I talk a little bit about my personal life and that sort of thing, but that's not what this is about, really. Although, who knows what might happen in the future. So, point being is, I felt it was time to do that because I really feel like I didn't want people to have the wrong perception, right? I didn't want people to think I am somebody that I am not. And I was starting to feel a little bit like maybe that was the case for some folks. You know, so I wanted I always endeavor to be authentic. And so I thought it was just time to kind of put it out there and say, you know, this is me, this is who I am, this is what I believe. And if you resonate with that, awesome. I'm glad you're here. And if you don't, then, you know, I'm sure you can find somebody else who does, but you know, you don't have to stick around. So, and one of the reasons for that is because I feel like there is a certain perception that people often have of people who do what I do, right? Who may be considered, you know, somebody who works in sort of like the spiritual community. And so I thought it was important to really be clear about what you're getting when you're, you know, engaging with me. So if you want to read about that, you can go to my Facebook. It's probably the best place to read it, easiest there. And I'll put the link below. Or you can go to Instagram, you know, if you don't do Facebook. And if you don't do either of those things, then that's okay. At some point in the not too distant future, my website will be up and you can read about me there. And if I get a hot minute, maybe I'll do a video about it as well and formally introduce myself here. But I haven't had a lot of time or opportunity to do that. So, having said that, let's get on with talking about the astrology here. So, we're going to focus on the new moon. Like I said, that's happening in Aquarius on February 1st, and that is at specifically 12:46 a.m. and that's Eastern time because that's my time zone, so that's what I use. You can adjust accordingly. And that new moon is at 12 degrees Aquarius. And the really significant thing that's happening associated with that full moon is that, the new moon, is that this new moon is conjunct Saturn, and it's also squaring Uranus, right? And that may sound somewhat familiar to you because we've been dealing with Saturn square Uranus for a very long time now. On and off, Saturn and Uranus have been coming into an exact square configuration in the sky, right? Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus, both fixed signs. Signs that have this energy of being sort of stuck in, being steadfast, unwavering, you know, attached to their convictions and perhaps just attached to sometimes status quo, or attached to, sometimes it can be attached to things, attached to people, Just having difficulty sort of letting go of things, right? Having a tight grip on something. The fixed signs are the signs that take place at the height of the 4 seasons. So, we've got Aquarius where this new moon is falling, and then Taurus where Uranus is sitting. And then we also have Leo and Scorpio that are the other 2 fixed signs. So that energy is very, stable, is another word we could use for it, but, also can be unwavering, for better or worse. So Saturn and Uranus have been in these fixed signs, and they have been coming into a square, like I was saying, on and off. And over the course of 2021, they came into an exact square 3 times. First on February 17th, secondly on June 14th, and then again on December 24th, 2021, right? And so this really was the defining signature of 2021. But the thing is, it's not over yet. Saturn and Uranus are still, having this tense conversation. And they're kind of pulling apart right now. But because of retrogrades, right, they come sort of close together again. And in the fall of this year, in October, I believe, of 2022, they will come into an almost exact square again, like very, very close. So, so we're not kind of breaking free of this energy just yet. And it's going to continue to play out. So it's important to kind of remember that as we're dealing with the other astrology of 2022. And this new moon is going to not let us forget that, actually, because again, it's the new moon conjunct Saturn and square Uranus. So what are these 2 energies about? Let me show you the chart real quick before we go any further. Still haven't gotten new printer ink, but you can kind of see it here. And just to point out, here's the new moon, sun and the moon together at 12 degrees of Aquarius, right? Right beside Saturn there, who's at 15 degrees Aquarius. So within 3 degrees of each other. And at all new moons, it's a time when the sun and the moon come together to birth something new, to conceive of something new, right? And then you have Uranus down here in Taurus at 10 degrees. So within 2 degrees of an exact square to the new moon. And still within 5 degrees of squaring Saturn. So still not that far away. And then we have all this energy up here in Capricorn right now. Now, I didn't mention this yet, but I will. And the other thing I'll just point out is, of course, the nodes of the moon have now shifted signs, right? The north node in Taurus, the south node in Scorpio. And we've talked about that. And we will continue to talk about that because that means that's where the eclipses will be for the next year and a half. So, one of the things I wanted to mention is that we've got Mars now ensconced in Capricorn. At the time of this recording, Mars just moved into Capricorn yesterday. Mars is in the sign of its exaltation in Capricorn. So it's comfortable there. It is revered there. It is comfortable doing its job, right? So taking action and really sort of pushing forward. And in Capricorn, an earth sign, it can take concrete action. It can take action towards, sort of building something in, something that is sustainable, something that is, has fortitude, and something that can sort of stand the test of time, among other things. So we have, Mars in Capricorn can be quite ambitious. So that's what's going on there. We also have Venus there. We have Mercury retrograde in Capricorn still, and of course Pluto's in Capricorn, inching closer and closer and closer to the exact degree of the United States Pluto return, which is at 27 degrees of Capricorn, and that is coming exact on February 22nd. And I'm not going to go into great detail about that in today's video. And I don't know if I will get a chance to make a video about that specifically. But what I will do is I'm going to post the link to a really good article from the Mountain Astrologer that was written. It was released in 2019, actually. So it was foretelling. And it's about the U.S. Pluto return, right? Which is when Pluto returns to the exact place it was in the sky at the time that the United States became a country, right? Recognized country. So, and Pluto takes 248 years to circle the zodiac. So people don't experience Pluto returns. But this is profound. It has profound implications. And in this article, in the Mountain Astrologer, you know, the history of Pluto returns is discussed in relation to other countries and in relation to the Roman Empire, for example. So it's a really interesting read. And again, I'll post the link below if you're interested in that. Okay, let's get on with talking about the new moon here. So we're talking about Saturn square Uranus. So this new moon is taking place in Aquarius, right? The fixed air sign of Aquarius. Fixed air can be an energy of our you know, we're really our ideologies are very unwavering. Fixed thinking, right? Really, we can hold tight to our convictions. You know, that can be very Aquarian in nature. And so that's where Saturn's hanging out. And Saturn in ancient astrology rules Aquarius. In modern day, you know, many modern day astrologers will say Uranus rules Aquarius. I'm of the mind, you know, I take the traditional approach. Saturn rules Aquarius. Uranus has an affinity for Aquarius. But Saturn's there in Aquarius, and then over in another fixed sign, fixed Earth, is Uranus in Taurus, right? This, where Saturn is this energy of the old, Uranus is the energy of the new. Saturn is rules, regulations, boundaries, structures, hierarchy. Saturn is, you know, Saturn says no. Uranus wants to liberate, break free, innovate, disrupt, this kind of thing, right? And so it's very, very clear that this is an energy that has been ongoing over the last year and some. And we, like in Canada, there's an event going on right now, for lack of a better word, that is really, really reflective of this, right? It's the trucker convoy. So which you may or may not heard of if you happen to be somebody who follows me on my personal Facebook. I'm sure you've heard of it, and what my stance on is that on that is. So but we won't get into that here, as much as I like to go on a rant. That's not what I'm here for at the moment. So anyway, you know, it's really, it's interesting because this new moon is drawing that to our attention, that energy once again of Saturn square Uranus. And so I want to read to you from Richard Tarnas's Cosmos and Psyche before I go any further. This is backwards because, again, I'm using my phone, but this is the cover of the book. Okay, Richard Tarnas is a very well-known astrologer, but historian and, you know, professor. He works at the California Institute of Integral Studies. And so anyways, this book is a seminal work, really. And I want to read to you, because he just does a better job than most, describing the archetypes of the planets, right? Of the, and especially the outer planets. Saturn is not an outer planet; it's a transpersonal planet. But anything past Saturn is an outer planet, right? But Saturn is the boundary. Saturn is where it's the farthest we can see with the naked eye, right? It's the last planet that we can see with the naked eye, and anything beyond that, we need a telescope to see. So there's that association with Saturn and the sort of material, concrete world, if you will. So Richard Tarnas does a really good job of giving you the archetypal flavor, the archetypal symbolism of the planets. And so I'm going to read to you how he describes Saturn and how he describes Uranus. And you can get a feeling for how these two energies may interact with each other when they are in a conversation of tension, which is what a square is, right? A 90-degree angle, a conversation of tension, of friction, a conversation of something's got to give. Squares can be frustrating, but they can also be very dynamic, and they can push us. They are of the nature of Mars. They can push us to take action, to resolve the tension. So this is what Richard Tarnas has to say about Saturn. Saturn, the principle of limit, structure, contraction, constraint, necessity, hard materiality, concrete manifestation, time, the past, tradition, age, maturity, morality, the endings of things, gravity and gravitas, weightiness, that which burdens, binds, challenges, fortifies, deepens, the tendency to confine and constrict, to separate, to divide and define, to cut and shorten, to negate and oppose, to strengthen and forge through tension and resistance, to rigidify, to repress, to maintain a conservative and strict authority, to experience difficulty, decline, deprivation, defect and deficit, defeat, failure, loss, alienation, the labor of existence, suffering, old age, death, the weight of the past, the workings of fate, character, karma, the consequences of past action, error and guilt, punishment, retribution, imprisonment, the sense of no exit, pessimism, inferiority, inhibition, isolation, oppression and depression, the impulse and capacity for discipline and duty, order, solitude, concentration, conciseness, thoroughness and precision, discrimination and objectivity, restraint and patience, endurance, responsibility, seriousness, authority, wisdom, the harvest of time, effort, and experience, the concern with consensus reality, factual concreteness, conventional forms and structures, foundations, boundaries, solidity and stability, security and control, rational organization, efficiency, law, right and wrong, judgment, the superego, the dark, cold, heavy, dense, dry, old, slow, distance, the senex, chronos, the stern father of the gods. So that is how Richard Tarnas describes Saturn, which is where, which is sitting in Aquarius right now, right? Where this new moon is happening, and Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius. And so that's Saturn. And then Saturn at the time of this new moon is squaring the new moon and squaring Uranus still, right? Although moved away from an exact square, still in close enough proximity that we are feeling the effects of that. So this is what Richard Tarnas has to say about Uranus. Since at least the turn of the 20th century, the unanimous consensus among astrologers is that the planet Uranus is empirically associated with the principle of change, rebellion, freedom, liberation, reform, and revolution, and the unexpected breakup of structures, with sudden surprises, revelations, and awakenings, lightning-like flashes of insight, the acceleration of thoughts and events, with births and new beginnings of all kinds, and with intellectual brilliance, cultural innovation, technological invention, experiment, creativity, and originality. In addition to the occurrence of sudden breakthroughs and liberating events, Uranus transits are linked to unpredictable and disruptive changes. Hence, The planet is often referred to as the cosmic trickster. Another set of themes associated with Uranus is a concern with the celestial and the cosmic, with astronomy and astrology, with science and esoteric knowledge, and with the space travel and aviation. With respect to personal character, Uranus is regarded as signifying the rebel and the innovator, the awakener, the individualist, the dissident, the eccentric, the restless and wayward. These various qualities are considered to be pronounced in persons both with a prominent Uranus and expressed so conspicuously in a person's life during Uranus transits that there seems to have been no significant disagreement among astrological authorities for at least the past century that these characteristics reflect the archetypal nature of the planet Uranus. And he goes on and on. But I'll stop there because that gives you an idea. So this is what these two energies are heavily involved in this new moon, right? And we can see how that's been playing out on the world stage in many ways over the last year or so, and how it continues to. You know, this is not something new to us at this point. And as it's been playing out on a global scale, it has also been playing out in our own lives. And that's because we all have the signs of Aquarius and Taurus somewhere in our natal chart, right? Everybody has all 12 signs in their chart. All of the planets are in your chart, and all of the signs. So, you know, it's just that things are configured differently depending on your specific birth details. So every one of us has Aquarius and Taurus somewhere in our chart. And as I go through talking about this new moon through each of the 12 signs, I will refresh your memory in case you don't know what houses those sit for you. And I'll talk about that tension that you may be feeling on a personal level, right? And of course, like anything, how personally we feel these events always depends on how they relate to our own chart. So in the case of this new moon, for example, which is happening at 12 degrees Aquarius, if you have significant placements around 12 degrees Aquarius, even give or take, say Saturn's at 15 degrees there. So anywhere between sort of like 13, 14 degrees Aquarius, all the way to, anywhere between 16, 17 degrees Aquarius back to, roughly 9, 10 degrees Aquarius, or the other fixed signs, which are Taurus, Scorpio, and Leo, then you will have a more personal engagement with this new moon, right? And with this Saturn-Uranus square. So again, that's somewhere like when we're speaking specifically to this new moon, if you've got placements between, again, somewhere around 9 degrees to 16, 17 degrees of the fixed signs, then, you're having a personal experience with this. If you don't have anything around, and when I say significant placements, so if you have your sun there, your rising sign is there, your ascendant is there, your moon sign is there, you have other, you have 1 or 2 planets around that degree, or one of the angles around that degree, those degrees, then you're having a more personal interaction. If you don't have any of that, then you're less likely to feel this as personally, right? It's still happening, and you still may notice it, but you may notice it less profoundly, less urgently, or just more in the goings on around you rather than personally. So what else do I want to say about that? A couple of things. One thing I want to say is that this new moon, where the sun and the moon are coming together to conceive of something new, will reach a culmination point, right? It will be it will reach the precipice at when we have the full moon in Aquarius on August 11th of 2022. So, you know, six months time. But on a smaller scale, as moon cycles work, you know, the monthly cycles, whatever gets off the ground now at the time of this new moon, whatever is initiated now, whether that is initiated by you, ideally we have some involvement in what's initiated, or whether it's initiated by powers beyond your control, you know, something comes to pass at the next full moon, which is in 2 weeks time, which is, if you just sit tight for a second, I can't remember the date, but I will tell you very shortly here. So it will be on February 16th, and we will have a full moon in Leo on February 16th. So, you know, between this new moon in Aquarius on the 1st and the full moon in Leo on the 16th, whatever's planted grows, right? To fullness, reaching a point of culmination in 2 weeks time, but on a grander scale, kind of 6 months down the road. So, and we could go, you know, beyond that with the cycles, but that will suffice for our purposes here. So that's, you know, that's what to keep your eye on. Now, when you're talking about Aquarius, you know, we already mentioned Aquarius is a fixed air sign, so it's a very cerebral sign, right? It is powered by intellect, shall we say. It has the qualities of innovation and, you know, perhaps like thinking outside the box. Aquarius is very concerned with how people can be individuals, but within the context of the group. Aquarius is focused on the group, but not necessarily in a peace, love, and, you know, understanding sort of way. It is, because Aquarius is a very cerebral sign, it's an air sign, it can be a bit emotionally detached. So it's more of sort of like the observer, you know, it has this reputation for being a little bit eccentric. And I think of it, I oftentimes think of, you know, Aquarius being ruled by Saturn. Some people think, well, how can Aquarius and Saturn be connected? Well, if you think of the rings around Saturn, right, and Saturn as the boundary, I see Aquarius in some ways as you know, as the boundary pusher. But it can also be, as I said, very boundaried in its ideologies and its thinking, and you know, the sort of stance that it takes and its beliefs. And there can be a real sort of surgical, like communication method, almost like very, very, you know, logical, rational sort of thing, removed from emotion. So, but very able to see into the future in some ways, right? And to innovate, and a real capacity for thinking like about systems. I was saying on Facebook the other day, I posted this picture, you know, I was talking about Aquarius season, and it's a picture of like the brain and all the neurons firing, and it's like I feel like very much like that is symbolic of Aquarius, right? Those neural pathways. And I was talking about how Aquarius is connected to the, you know, the notion of the Babylonian god, the Egyptian god. The name is escaping me. Happy, Happy, and, you know, who was the one who flooded the Nile River, which the Egyptian people were reliant on, right? And anyways, you can go to my Facebook or my Instagram and read about that. But I was just talking about how that symbolism of like the flooding of the Nile and bringing the life, literally, right, to the earth, because otherwise it would have just been dry, desolate land. But you know, the water trickling in through tributaries and channels, and how that reminds me of like the neural pathways in the brain, right? And the very Aquarian sort of cerebral symbolism there. So I'm rambling. Anyway, so, you know, that's sort of Aquarius in a nutshell. And of course, there's always more that could be said about that. But there is this capacity for sort of, you know, very rational thinking, but then there can be a detachment from the emotional side of things. And sometimes, you know, for better, for worse, let's put it that way. So that's it's a new moon, right? The moon is often like, the moon is associated with our emotions and our feelings, among other things, but it is a full moon where we may be better able to sort of compartmentalize our feelings, right? To be a little bit emotionally detached, and maybe even emotionally cool, if you will. And then it'll all come out at the full moon in Leo, the very dramatic full moon in Leo in 2 weeks' time. But, you know, this is a time where, yeah, we might be able to sort of like look at things a little bit more rationally and logically. But there is some tension here with the Aquarius energy and, you know, the Uranus, the disruptor, the liberator in Taurus, the earth sign. And, you know, a fixed earth sign is very practical, likes its comforts. Taurus is ruled by Venus, right? All about the pleasure and the five senses, very connected to nature, and our resources, and our food supply, and these kinds of things, right? So, you know, this is the tension here. So in your chart, you will have Uranus in Taurus in a particular house, and you will have Saturn and the new moon happening in Aquarius in another house that's squaring, right? And what houses those are in depends on what your rising sign is. So that's how we do these horoscopes, these general horoscopes. Is based first and foremost on rising sign or your ascendant. So which means the same thing essentially. So if you know your rising sign, when I'm doing these horoscopes, please listen for that first and foremost. Then you can also listen for your sun sign, because there will be, you know, useful information there as well. And you can listen for your moon sign as well. And you can listen for your sun sign, particularly if you're somebody that's born in the daytime, when the sun was above the horizon, or if you're somebody that was born at night, if you have a night chart, if you're born when the sun was below the horizon, then your moon sign may resonate more with you. So I'm going to take it through the signs, and I'm going to speak to the house that is that Aquarius sits in, right, based on your rising sign, and the new moon, and the themes that are being triggered by this new moon. So the house themes, right, are where you should sort of put your focus in terms of, if you are intentionally looking to start something new around this time, then if you want to work more in more alignment with the natural sort of cycles, then you would focus on the themes that, encompass that particular house. Hopefully I'm being clear there. And I'll tell you what those are. And then we'll talk just briefly about where Uranus is sitting over there in Taurus, and kind of being a bit of a poke in the bear a little, shall we say. and, you know, maybe bringing some tension, some disruption, some urge for freedom and liberation. And that is filtered through the lens of whatever house that Taurus sits in your chart. Okay. So, okay, let's, enough of me rambling on, and let's take it through the signs now. And we're going to start first and foremost with Aquarius, because this is your new moon, Aquarius. And definitely listen to the introduction so that you get the details, right? Otherwise, if you just listen to this little snippet that I'm telling you about here based on your sign, then you miss a lot. So, but of course, that's your call. So Aquarius, we're beginning with you. It's your new moon, right? Everybody gets usually one new moon of the year, and this is yours. So Aquarius, first of all, if you're Aquarius sun sign, happy birthday, happy solar return. But this is your new moon, and so it's a time to really set your intentions, if you will, for, you know, it's the beginning of your personal new year. Let's put it that way. And with a new moon in your first house, right? Anything that happens in the first house can affect the entirety of the person and their lives, because the first house is all about you. It is about your physical sort of, you know, incarnation here on planet Earth. It's about your physical vitality and your body. It can be about, you know, it can reflect your appearance even. But it's very much about how you come at the world, how the world perceives you. You know, the first house is sort of associated with that, you know, our sort of announcement into the world, right? Our birth, like, here we are, here I am, kind of thing. And how you present to the world. So it's when we have something significant happening in the first house, then that there can be changes around those things. And in this case, it may be that you are, you know, beginning something new, intending something new, conceiving of something new, or something new is occurring in the realm of your life, right? Big picture. It may relate to your relationships, even, because this is, you know, a first house new moon. It can relate to your relationship to yourself, most notably. But it can be about your relationship to your physicality, right? This can be a time when you're intending things like, it can be something as simple as changing up your wardrobe, you know, so that when you're out in public, people see you in a different way. There's something new about you, you know, or it could be anything like cosmetic procedures, changing your hair, your appearance in some way. It's something having to do with a change in your physical vitality. Or your sort of trajectory in life in general, you know, can be implicated here when we're talking about the first house. So you may make, you know, something may transpire. You may make some sort of like a public announcement or something like that, that then the people around you, the world, perceives you in a new way, right? Like you are presenting yourself to the world in a new way, so to speak. So that's where the new moon is happening for you. And then there's this tension happening with Uranus and Taurus in your fourth house. So this energy of disruption, this energy of liberation, of freedom, all those, you know, Uranian principles of innovation, or there may be some kind of like flash of insight or shocking occurrence or something like that, right? And that doesn't mean it has to be bad. So, you know, you don't have to think that, and that's coming from the fourth house, that realm of home, family, roots, place of living, parents, real estate, your sense of emotional security, this kind of thing. So that's where Uranus and Taurus is sitting for you. And, you know, Uranus and Taurus has been disrupting things there for a time now, for at least like 4 years. I can't remember exactly when Uranus entered Taurus. I think 2018 or maybe the end of 2017. And so, you know, but then when it comes into the square with Saturn, it meets with tension, and there's this need, there's this push and pull, and this like this need for working through the tension, right? So that, my Aquarians, is what's going on for you. Sorry, it's very dry in here. So next off, we have Capricorn. Capricorn, for you, you've got the new moon happening in your second house. And so this is something new, some new seeds being planted, something new being conceived of, something new coming into your awareness that relates to your resources, most notably, right? The second house. So your resources, what do I mean by that? Your finances, right? So the money you make from whatever it is you do, which can include, you know, entrepreneurship and those sorts of things even. It can relate to how you sustain yourself, how you get your basic needs met. So yes, that's through money. It can also be through other resources like material possessions, you know, that allow you to have a sense of like stability. It's also about what you value in the second house, right? And your sense of self-worth even. So this is where the new moon is transpiring for you. So something new getting off the ground there, or being planted there, as relates to those second house themes. And there's this conjunction with Saturn, which is your ruling planet, right? Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius. And Saturn is there. It may be, you know, a sobering moment where whatever it is that you are beginning anew has a sense of somberness, but it can also be, there can be a sense of responsibility and maturity around whatever this is, or restriction even. You know, maybe you're tightening the belt a little as far as your finances go, you know, but it's in order to, like, it's with an eye on the long game, so to speak. So that's one scenario. You could be sort of reevaluating your own values in some way, and there's a spark of something new happening there. And again, it may have a bit of a Saturnian influence. But then there is this tension happening, right, between that new moon conjunct Saturn and Uranus and Taurus for you, Capricorn, which sits in your fifth house. So the disruption, the need for freedom and liberation, perhaps, the surprises are coming from that fifth house, which have to do with your pleasure pursuits. So how you have fun in life, you know, the things you do for fun, what sparks joy for you, so to speak, which can be hobbies and things like that even. It's very much associated with children as well. The fifth house is the house of children, right? Your children or children that you are somehow associated with. And things you do creatively as well, right? Your creative sort of self-expression, your individual self-expression there in the fifth house. And so something with Uranus traveling through there, there's been disruptions in that area of life for quite a while now, for several years. But with this constant on and off tension between Saturn and Uranus, there's this, right? There's this like tight, sometimes you get backed into a corner and something's got to give, right? Between those two areas of your personal resources and values and, you know, your kids, your pleasure pursuits and those sorts of things. So look for something new, or intend for something new as related to those second house themes, and expect maybe a bit of disruption to show up through that fifth house, those fifth house themes like we talked about. So that's for you, Capricorn. I'm going to move to Sagittarius now. So Sag, for you, the new moon in Aquarius is happening in your third house. So this is the house that has to do with you know, in many ways, it corresponds to kind of like the busyness of everyday life in a different way than the sixth house. In the third house, you know, we think of things like our daily communications and the instruments of communication that we use, right? The technologies and things, and even how we get out and about, you know, our vehicles, short distance travel, our commutes, that sort of thing. Also very much about the people that we tend to interact with regularly, that are sort of on like the same playing field as us, if you will. So people like siblings, right? Third house traditionally is a house of siblings. Siblings, cousins, even neighbors, community members, friends that feel like siblings. Third house can speak to things like communications and marketing in general, right? Commerce, those sorts of things. Teaching, learning, usually as it relates to earlier years. So elementary school, high school, you know, learning the 101 of things, sort of thing, learning the basics. So that's all third house, right? It's a busy place, the third house. It sort of speaks to all the things swirling around in our immediate environment on the day to day. And so there's something new transpiring here for you, Sag, or you may be intending something new, you know, or conceiving of something new around the time of this new moon in Aquarius. That could be anything from, oh my goodness, so many things. It could be like, you have a new commute that begins around then. But because of the presence of Saturn close to this new moon, it could feel a little bit like a downer or just feel a little bit like, you know, there's whatever thing that's happening here, whatever new thing is getting off the ground, there's an element of responsibility, of maturity, of somberness, of restriction, even potentially with Saturn there, right? So this could involve schooling. If you have kids in school, or you're somebody that works in an educational environment with kids, it could have something to do with that. It could have something to do with communications, daily communications that are just, you know, there's something new, but also something a little bit Saturnian about those communications. So that's the third house. And then you've got Uranus and Taurus over there in your sixth house, right? That is disrupting things on and off for a while now. But in relation to this new moon, it's in some tension with your third house. And that sixth house is the other house where we see often, you know, the daily grind. And this is like our daily work, whether that be paid work or unpaid work. It is the hard work of life that we don't always get rewarded for. You know, it is how we are in service to others. It is related, sixth house is related to our health and wellness. It can be related to illness. And oftentimes those things are associated with what we're doing on the day to day, right? Our kind of daily routines can be impacted by our health, or vice versa. And the sixth house can also speak to pets if that's relevant to you. So for you, Uranus and Taurus is there disrupting things a little, right? And this may be disruptions in health, you know, disruptions as related to illness or health care in some way. It can be changes, disruptions, a need for liberation, an impulse for freedom. Freedom from the daily grind, you know, and the drudgery of life sort of thing. Freedom in the workplace, or as related to those kinds of things. And so these two areas of life, the sixth house and the third house, are in, you know, some tension at the time of this new moon. But the new moon itself is focusing on that third house, which we spoke about. So that's for you, Sagittarius. I'm going to move on to Scorpio now, where you've got the new moon playing out in your fourth house. So Scorpio, for you, this new moon, this new moon revolves all around home, family, your roots, your place of living, real estate, parenting, parents, this, your sense of sort of emotional security are all implicated here in this new moon. So something new is being conceived of, or you're starting something new is being initiated um, in this fourth house arena, right? And it is, it may be something that involves some responsibility because Saturn is sitting there close to that new moon, or something that has like a sort of a more sobering quality to it, or a more structured quality, or has to do with any of the Saturnian archetypal, words that I shared with you from Richard Tarnas at the beginning of this video. So make sure you don't skip the intro. And then, you know, there is this tension happening with that new moon and Uranus and Taurus in your seventh house of one-to-one relationships and partnerships. And this can be anything from your close personal relationships with friends and family to, your marriage partner, significant other, to business partners, to rivals even. It can also involve contracts and agreements. When I think of fourth, seventh house, sometimes I think of like real estate deals. But, it doesn't, like, that's just one example out of many, many, but that's just something that pops into my head. So the disruption is coming from the seventh house of partnerships or contracts and agreements, or it's a need for liberation and change, or it's a person in your life that has that's going through a bit of a Uranian experience, right? There may be some surprises, some shakeups, some need for freedom, or some need to kind of disrupt the status quo in some way. And then, you are looking at some new experience, some new endeavor in the fourth house, like we talked about at the time of this new moon, that will then, you'll see how that reaches a point of culmination in 2 weeks time at the Leo full moon, or again like 6 months time, right, at the Aquarius full moon that will happen in August of 2022. So something new in the fourth house. What could that be? Oh, many things. It could be a new place to live. It could be a real estate deal of some description, like I said. It can be something new that involves your family, that involves parenting in some way, that involves your familial ancestry in some way even, right? So those are the themes to look out for you, Scorpio. We're going to move on to Libra. Libra, for you, the new moon's happening in your fifth house of children, your children or other people's children, or children that you're somehow connected to. Fifth house also speaks very much to what are our pleasure pursuits, right? What makes us happy and what allows us to have fun in life? How do we have fun? What sparks joy for us? And our creative pursuits, right? Our sort of individual creativity, if you will. This, and this can be like entrepreneurial ventures. It can even be hobbies or sports in the fifth house as well. These sorts of things. And so that's, the new moon there is saying it's time to make some new intentions for this area of life. Or if you're not doing that, yourself, you may notice something new is transpiring. Something new will be sparked in this area of life, or that relates to that area of life for you. And it may have a bit of a Saturnian flavor to it because Saturn is there close to the new moon. So there may be a sense of responsibility or restriction, or somberness, or something that, is being initiated that you really want to be structured or long lasting even. So, and that is intention. Whatever that thing is in tension with Uranus and Taurus in the eighth house. And Uranus has been traveling through your 8th house for a time now and will continue to do so, you know, in an on and off square with Saturn in the 5th there. So squaring this new moon is Uranus, the disruptor in your 8th house of your entanglements with other people. Other people's resources. So this can be resources of a partner or business, you know, associates. But it can also be things like taxes, debt, insurance, loans, bursaries, lottery winnings, gifts, things that come to you from other people or things that go out to other people, right? Financial institutions or whatever. I don't know if I said like inheritance and things like that in there. So those are some themes. The 8th house is a house that is very much about this. Well, you know, it often has to do with things that are kind of beyond our control and how we have been psychologically impacted by our entanglements with other people, right? And so, and there can be this real sense of having like of surrender in the 8th house, and through that there is a rebirth of sorts, right? So that it's associated with this notion of transformation and death and rebirth in the 8th house as well. So that's Uranus is disrupting that area of life. And at the time of this new moon, you know, there may be something sort of that goes on there that has this Uranian quality to it of suddenness or surprises or need for freedom or disruption or those sorts of things. That is in a bit of tension with this new moon in your 5th. So that's for you, Libra. I'm going to move to Virgo now. I feel like I'm talking a lot, as always. Virgo, for you, this new moon is happening in your 6th house. So whatever this new thing is that either you are initiating or is being initiated, you know, is being sparked, it revolves around your daily grind in some way, which is the 6th house. And the 6th house is all about the hard work that we put in on the day-to-day that may be thankless. It may be drudgery, to be quite honest with you. Or it may just be like what you are devoted to on the day-to-day that you may or may not get compensated for financially, right? Or otherwise. It is the checking off the ticky boxes sort of house. It has to do also with illness and health and things surrounding those themes, right? It has to do with pets as well, if that's relevant to you. So, excuse me, how you are in service, right, is a 6th house theme. So all that to say, this is where the new moon is happening. So you are either planting some seeds of intention there yourself, or you have an inkling of something new coming into your awareness around this time, then that's in that area of life, right? And it may have a bit of a serious quality to it because of the presence of Saturn in close proximity to the new moon. And Saturn is there, you know, maybe bringing about some restriction or being a bit stern, or, you know, calling for some responsibility and maturity, or, you know, just bringing this air of whatever it is that you're doing has long-lasting implications, because Saturn is, you know, Chronos, Father Time. So that's what's going on in the 5th house or 6th house, Virgo. And then you've got Uranus disrupting your 9th house, right? So Uranus has been disrupting your 9th house, Uranus and Taurus, for a few years now, but it's this on and off square with Saturn that, you know, brings these things to a head every so often. And the time of this new moon, Uranus is in a square, right, with the new moon. And so there can be something going on in that house of expanding your horizons, regarding themes of your ideologies and your worldview and your belief system, things that you are learning or teaching that may be sort of outside your immediate, you know, zone. They can be things like, it's like what you learn from people who are different from you, from people who are, maybe live in faraway places or just have different beliefs and ideologies. Um, the ninth house can be travel related. The ninth house can be related to justice and the justice system. Um, you know, it can be about publishing. It can be about you, um, sort of as the teacher, or you encountering a teacher in some way as well. So that's where Uranus is, disrupting those things. And perhaps, being a bit of like poking the bear a little in terms of, the energy of this new moon. And I'm laughing because like I'm a Virgo rising, so I'm kind of seeing where this is going for me personally. Anyway, so, that's what's going on for you, Virgo. And we're going to move to Leo now. So Leo, for you, the new moon is happening in your 7th house of one-to-one partnerships, of, this can be significant other, marriage partnership, or the like. It can be close friends and family members. It can be your connections with business associates, business partners. It can revolve around contracts and agreements. It can have to do with rivals in the 7th house as well, which is something that not everybody mentions when they mention the 7th house, but it is a thing, a signification of the 7th house. So this is where the new moon is happening for you. So there's some new intention that you are either setting, or there is a new seed being planted here, whether you're aware of it right now or not. And so, it's always good to work with these things intentionally if we can. But something new is transpiring. And, as we move to the full moon in Leo in your sign, a couple weeks from now, you may get a sense of how that's culminating, right? At least the initial phases of it. And it relates to, the themes I already mentioned to you, but because Saturn is there, whew, my hair, it's a little dry in here, so there's a little static going on. Saturn is there close to that new moon. And so Saturn is being, the authoritarian a little bit. Saturn is strict, and Saturn is, deals with those principles of restriction and maybe time constraints, or something that's going on that is built to last, or Saturn speaks to authority and authority figures. Saturn deals with maturity, responsibility, austerity measures, these types of things. I read to you from Richard Tarnas's book, right? So all those things. So this new moon can have a bit of a Saturnian flavor to it, when it is in a Saturn ruled sign of Aquarius. And then there is some tension happening in relation to this new moon from Uranus in Taurus in your 10th house. So Uranus has been moving through your 10th house for a few years, disrupting the status quo when it comes to your career, your public reputation and persona, the legacy you wish to leave, your relationship to authority, your own authority, these kinds of things. And at the time of this new moon, Uranus there's some tension there between these things. Uranus wants to liberate and disrupt, and, Saturn wants to be serious, and follow the rules, and that kind of thing. So, you'll know when you think about your own life what this is about for you and how these energies are playing out. And it should be sort of, so this can be like let's just say a new partnership is being formed. It could be a business partnership around the time of this new moon, right? And so that can have a surprising effect on your career, for example. Or it can be something going on with your partner, something new going on with your partner or a significant other, or, a person that you have a close relationship with that has, that is somehow intention with your career or your public reputation, or there's some sort of disruption or need for or innovation that can take place there between those two houses as well. But it can feel a little bit tense, right? There can be some friction there. So, okay, that's for you, Leo. Definitely listen to the intro for all the details. I'm going to move to Cancer now, where Cancer, we have the new moon for you in Aquarius taking place in your 8th house. And so there is something new getting off the ground here, something new being implicated, you beginning something new potentially and intentionally, as it speaks to your 8th house of other people's resources. So other people's time, money, energy, things like taxes, debt, wills, insurance, inheritance, loans, bursaries, these sorts of things, partners, income, that kind of thing can be 8th house related. This notion of your entanglements with other people, and sometimes how those can have a psychological, impact on us. The 8th house can be about the sort of the skeletons in the closet. It can be about our intimate connections. It can be about this notion of the cycle of death and rebirth. So that's where the new moon is happening for you. Maybe there's something new happening, like just on a very mundane sort of level. It could have to be, some new tax arrangement or some new, something new transpires as it relates. Like maybe you're writing up a new will. That would be a new moon conjunct Saturn in the 8th house. That I could see that being a thing, definitely. Because you're trying to do something responsible for the future sort of thing. So that would be one way that this could potentially play out. But there's something new there in the 8th house transpiring that will reach, that will level up or reach a culmination point in a couple weeks time at the full moon in Leo. And then, again at the full moon in Aquarius in the summer in August of 2022. And in relation to that, you've got Uranus sitting in your 11th house in Taurus, disrupting that area of life for the last few years, and in a tense conversation with this new moon, right? And that 11th house speaks to groups, associations, friendships. It speaks to our supporters and our allies, and sort of like our hopes and dreams for the future, and the people that are walking that path with us and that can support us. And that kind of thing. So there's some disruption going on there, right? And it maybe that disruption, whatever it is, maybe intention here with the 8th house and the themes and around the new moon that we just spoke about. So that's for you, Cancer. Please listen to the intro for all the meat and potatoes, so to speak. And I'm going to move on to Gemini now, where Gemini, you have the new moon taking place in your 9th house. So this new moon in Aquarius, conjunct Saturn, is happening in the house of your outlook on life, meaning, like your ideologies, your worldview, your philosophies. It has to do with expanding your horizons in the 9th house, which can be through travel sometimes, or it can be through, your interactions with people who are different than you, right? Different cultures and that sort of thing. The 9th house can speak to higher education. So anything revolving around sort of post-secondary or college, university, learning beyond the basics. It can have to do with publishing. It can have to do with justice and those sorts of things as well in the 9th house. So Gemini, for you, this is where the new moon is happening. And again, it can have a somber flavor to it because of the presence of Saturn, or it could be, a maturing going on, or taking some responsibility. Maybe you're taking sort of more responsibility for the way you see the world. That could be one way that this plays out. But there's something new transpiring here in that 9th house. Maybe you're starting a new course of study that's going to require, you know, you to do some adulting kind of thing, you know, study hard, those sorts of things. It could be something along those lines, many things. But there is some disruption happening in your 12th house. And because Uranus is traveling through the 12th house, which is Taurus, right, for you. And at the time of this new moon, this, you know, Uranus is in tension with this new moon. So there can be some disruptions, some need for freedom and liberation, and all those Uranian things that we talked about in the introduction that revolve around the things in life that are sort of hidden, that are behind closed doors, that may be in, you know, buried in your unconscious, but also the things that, you know, it can be have to do with secrets. It can have to do with things that, you know, your self-sabotaging behaviors, bad habits, you know, these sorts of things. Or it can have to do with, like, when we think of the 12th house, it's this place where we are removed from, you know, it's opposite the 6th house, the daily grind. We are sort of removed from that in some way, in the sense that it can be about, you know, places that are kind of tucked away from the world. So anything like hospitals, hospices, spiritual retreat centers, prisons, you know, rehab facilities, or even, you know, how you retreat from the world, how you spend time in solitude, how you go on vacation, how you have downtime, your dream life, even, you know, the unseen sort of realms are all 12th house related. So something's going on here. There's a bit of disruption happening as relates to that. And it can be in a bit of tension with whatever new thing is transpiring at the time of this new moon for you, Gemini. So listen to the intro for all the deets, and I'm going to move on to Taurus now. Taurus, for you, this new moon is happening in your 10th house. 10th house of career, of public reputation and persona, of authority and authority figures, and your own sense of authority in the world, of the legacy you wish to leave. These are all 10th house themes. And so whatever new is transpiring for you, whether that's something you're initiating yourself or something that new that's just coming into your awareness, right, and into your life, it revolves around these themes of the 10th house. And there is a Saturnian flavor to it because Saturn is close to this new moon, and Saturn rules Aquarius, where the new moon is happening. And so there can be this, you know, whatever that 10th house thing is, there can be this somberness or sense of seriousness or responsibility, or something that is, whatever new thing it is, you know, you're in it for the long haul, or there's a sense of time boundness to it, or there's a sense of restriction around it in some way even. Those are all Saturnian qualities, right? And then you've got Uranus in your first house, in your sign, that's been there for a while, disrupting the status quo, right? And is in tension with this new moon. And that first house has all to do with you. It is about your physical vitality and body and your appearance potentially, and how you come at the world, how the world perceives you, you know, how you present yourself to the world, your trajectory, you know, are all first house themes. And so, you know, you could be making a lot of changes there, experiencing a lot of changes and disruption in that regard. And there could be a need to break free or liberate in some way, right? But it's a sort of in some tension with what transpires at the time of this new moon. Okay, so that's for you, Taurus. We're going to move to Aries now. Aries, for you, you have the new moon happening in your 11th house, right? New moon in Aquarius on February 1st, happening in your 11th house of the group of friendships, associations, clubs, of your supporters and your allies, and the people that can help you get where you want to go, right? That can help you reach your hopes and dreams for the future. So there's a newness here, something new transpiring. And it could be seeds of intention that you are planting, or just something new, you know, that you are not purposely intending, but it's coming into your awareness right now, into your sphere. And it revolves around those 11th house themes, and it may have a bit of a Saturnian flavor to it, a sense of somberness or soberness or strictness or restriction, seriousness, responsibility, maturity, you know, structure, integrity, these sorts of things. And then you've got Uranus moving through your second house and disrupting things for the last few years, and in tension with this new moon right now. Uranus and Taurus in your second house of your resources, your personal resources, your finances, your time, your money, your energy, how you get your basic needs met, right? Um, your sense of security in the world, what you value, and your sense of self-worth. These are all second house themes. And so there's, this disruption, whatever disruption is going on there, or the urge for freedom or liberation, is in some tension with the 11th house new moon that's taking place on February 1st. So that's for you, Aries. We're going to move to last but not least in this scenario here, Pisces. Pisces, for you, this new moon is happening in your 12th house. Aquarius sits in the 12th house for you. And so if you're a Pisces sun sign, you're at that point in the yearly cycle where you're probably low on energy and you're retreating a little bit right now. Because you're getting ready for your own personal new year, which will take place when the sun enters Pisces, right? So, but if you're a Pisces rising, this is, you have Pisces in your first house, which means you have Aquarius in your 12th house, which is where this new moon is happening. And so the 12th house speaks to themes of retreat, of how you spend time in solitude and, away from the world. And sometimes that involves places like hospitals and other institutions, spiritual retreat centers, rehab facilities, detention facilities, like anything like that's tucked away from the world. It can be a vacation home even, or someplace you go on vacation, and then there is, there's also themes of sort of the unconscious, things like your own bad habits or self-sabotaging behaviors can come into play here, secrets, those sorts of things. So whatever new thing is transpiring, or whatever new thing you're intending around this new moon, revolves around or should be focused on those areas, right? And there can be a bit of a somber quality to that because of the presence of Saturn. So there can be some, adulting that has to be done, a sense of maturity and responsibility. And, sometimes like even things like hardship is related to Saturn, or structure, and, things related to time and aging and, just sort of the more serious things in life. And so there's an element of that there. But then there's some there's some disruption happening. And that is happening in your third house because Uranus has been moving through your third house, which is Taurus for you. That's where Taurus sits in your chart as a Pisces rising. And that's, this Uranus disruptive energy has been going on for the last few years, but at the time of this new moon, it's in tension with the new moon. And so, there's this impulse to liberate or for freedom or for, or there can be some surprises or some sort of innovation even happening. And that revolves around your third house of your immediate environment. And the daily communications and commutes and things and all the things that are involved in that, right? So what do we see here in the third house? Well, people like siblings, cousins, neighbors, community members, friends that feel like siblings, or we see things like our daily communications, messages exchanged back and forth, the vehicles of communication that we use, the technologies, or even actual vehicles, mobility, things like commerce, things like marketing and communications, also things like teaching and learning. And usually that has to do with like schooling at a more like a level of, early years, elementary school, high school sort of level. learning the basics, the 101s, that sort of thing, right? And so that's what's going on there. And so there's those two houses are in a bit of, you know, friction at this time, but something, the new thing, whatever it is, revolves around those 12th house themes. So that is the forecast for all 12 signs, and I hope you got something out of this. And if you did, I would love it if you would leave me a comment, a thumbs up, if you would subscribe to my channel, and I will catch you again for the full moon in Leo in a couple of weeks' time. But in the meantime, please join me over on Facebook and or Instagram, and the links to that are below, and I'll leave the link to that article from the Mountain Astrologer on the US Pluto return below, and the link to my soon to be launched new website. Okay, thanks so much. I'll catch you soon. Bye for now.